Okay, this shelf is my, I want to say random. It is random. It is culture and opinion. I actually have a program on my phone that I organize all my books on called Book Droid. I have an Android phone. Book Droid, I think it's called. Something like that. And the shelf, the virtual shelf I have all these books is called opinion because I don't know what else to say. Like it's like culture and it's about childhood. There's a little bit of childhood in there and letters to a young Contrarian. Like where would you put that? On looking into the abyss, this is like the destruction of objective culture or of individualist culture. And I don't know. But anyways, I'll just go through them. So this is like opinion. So here's the new tyranny, how nuclear power enslaves us. I don't know what that's going to be about. I have an open mind. I'll read and see what they have to say. There's Montesquieu's, the Persian letters. I don't remember why I picked that up, but there was a reason. There was a reason. Montesquieu. I think he is a historical writer. I know that for sure. Here's Incorrect Thoughts by John Leo. I got this idea to pick this one up from a YouTuber called 99s. So you spell out 9, and then 9, the number 9, and an S at the end. She is one of the few, this is going to sound bad, but that's too bad. She's one of the few women on YouTube that actually have a decent library. Here is On Looking into the Abyss. Untimely Thoughts on Culture and Society. Recently got this in the mail. This is supposed to be about culture and the destruction of culture. This is supposed to be kind of versus postmodernist stuff, like nihilism and things like that. So, Life at the Bottom by Dalrymple. Jeez. Dalrymple's a British writer. He's actually got a few... He's got a few interviews on YouTube. And Life at the Bottom, I did read it. I did read that one, not that book. I read a library book before I bought it to have. And it's about people in poverty and his perspective on people in poverty. And it's certainly a book that a lot of the people who how should I label them? I want to say people on the left, but there are certainly opinions of people in poverty that they are there from no fault of their own. They're victims, and there's no responsibility there because they're victims, and they couldn't do anything about it. All that kind of stuff. Dalrymple takes a different view and says actually many are there because of their decisions and because of their actions. And many of them they blow their welfare checks and things like that. Dalrymple was working in a hospital, I guess, I don't know if it was a prison hospital or was, anyways, I think it was in an impoverished area. And so he saw a lot of patients, of course, that were low income. And he, I guess, wasn't that compassionate about the situations and the stories they would tell him. He probably thought they were all idiots or something. So anyways, that's another perspective on poverty and the people in poverty. So it's important to have a well-rounded perspective and things like that. Here's The Age of Unreason by Charles Handy. It says here, if you put a frog in water and slowly heat it, the frog will eventually let itself be boiled to death. And so I think he must be inferring that if we let things change slowly, taxes go up 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, well, eventually you've got high taxes, yet you let it slowly occur. So even if we let changes happen slowly, eventually they're going to add all together, and it's going to be a problem, right? So that's the point. John Holt, Escape from Childhood, The Needs and Rights of Children. John Holt is definitely a reform writer in education. I'm not sure, I don't know him well enough to say if he was like a Rousseau person on childhood. Like, those are the people that romanticize childhood and say that we should let them grow on their own and we should hide them away from adult influences, and we want childhood to be a developmental era in and of itself. We don't want to conceive children as little adults. That kind of thinking. We want children to pursue their own interests, and a lot of that stuff I actually used to agree with, but I don't. Some of it I don't anymore. Here's more books on childhood. The Disappearance of Childhood. I have read this one. Neil Postman. Neil Postman is a pretty good writer. I have more of his stuff, which you'll see later. Neil Postman, Disappearance of Childhood. He also talks about innocence. Innocence is going away because, he talked about in medieval times that children were always around, even like in the bars, children would be there, and they would see drunkenness, and they would see violence, and they would see sex and things like that, and there was no innocence. Children saw everything. They were even dressed in adult clothing, just smaller versions. Children were thought of as just little adults. And even the French were considered to be children, even as adults, like just in the way that they're just their mannerisms and how they acted and stuff like that. So Postman argues that then came a period in which children were to be protected, kind of the Rousseau era. This is why Rousseau was so radical during his time. There was more art created where children were shown to be angelic and to be, not necessarily to be worshipped, but to be protected, and to be to put all your money and investment into your children, as opposed to just children just kind of come along and you just kind of have to deal with them and put up with them and stuff like that. And so Postman argues that today with media, there's another book he talks more about media. That is somewhere. It should be in this shelf. I'm not sure where it is though. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I'll get to it. In this culture where again we're moving into a medieval era where children see everything, that there's no secrets. There's actually a really good quote. I don't know if I can find it. I probably underlined it, but there's a really good quote about children once again are being exposed to everything. There's no secrets anymore. They're not allowed to develop without the nasty adult truths that we all put up with as adults. And I don't know, I can't find it, but there's a really good quote about that. So he kind of is saying that again, the whole concept of childhood is disappearing because children have. It's not about TV and internet. Children have access to all this stuff again. They can see sex and they can see drug use. That's a big one for today. Violence and going to bars, underage drinking, underage getting into bars with fake IDs, and all that stuff is now destroying childhood again. And you could consider little girls are wearing makeup earlier and earlier, and all that stuff is destroying childhood as a time for children to be children kind of thing, as opposed to being adults as quickly as possible. So that's what that's about. Okay, enough about that. Here's Erik Erikson. He's half psychoanalysis, that's Freud, and then half psychology. There's Childhood and Society. Don't know much about that. Can't tell you much about that. There's Growing Up Absurd by Paul Goodman. Let me see if I can get a little thing for you here. It's talking about spiritual emptiness of technology. I guess here Paul Goodman is trying to talk about the society versus the disaffected youngster. So maybe he's trying to account for why many youth are rebellious, and although when has that not been the case? Okay, here's one I read, and I got more to say. Here's another one by Neil Postman, Amusing Ourselves to Death. So the cover is important with this one. So look at the cover. Public discourse in the age of show business. Now notice something, they don't have any heads. And that's important. And what are they in front of? They're in front of a TV. So this is a good one. Very good. Learned about media. Media's effect on society and people. We spend a lot of time, or some of us, I certainly don't watch TV. We spend a lot of time watching, I wanted to use not a PG word there. We're spending our time watching dumb TV shows and filling our brains with entertainment. And he talking about, he actually goes through the history of, I'm pretty sure it was that book. I think so. He goes through the history of writing, a little bit of a tour of the history of writing, and how that in the 19th century, people used to go to these public talks. They would go like to a hall, and they would listen to someone speak and argue, and they would speak as you see like in Old English. They would speak very eloquently, and the audience could understand them. And they would argue for different things. And a lot of, and then came writing in the printing press, and then you could write your views down, and pamphlets were given out to people. There wasn't necessarily news every day, but there was arguments, and there was fights over government, and fights about different things, and the whole the use of media in those days was for, I guess the best way to put it is argument. It was for that kind of discourse. But today, and so then he contrasts it with today. Today the media is entertainment, and that has never been the case. So that is the big thesis. Media now, even notice notice commercials. They're very fast paced. Even the news. The news is really quick little segments, like 20-second segments, and then off to something else. And also notice there's music. There's always music that is the segue to other things. And there's always this entertainment, this like latching on of the brain to watch TV, to hold you there. So another thing important, I'll say one more thing about it. Very beginning of the book, he talks about he's obviously portraying a dystopia that we're going to arise in. We're going to happen. We're going to find out the hard way. We're going to fall into a dystopia. He talks about, was it George Orwell or was it Huxley that was right? Was it 1984? With 1984, you better have read that, by the way. You should read that one and read Brave New World. 1984 is that governments enslave everyone, and they pump the media with propaganda. It's a totalitarian state. They run everything. It's actually Plato's utopia. Plato wrote the Republic, but actually it's a mistranslation. The book title should be called The Absolute State. The Polesia, something like that is the actual title, the Greek title. But really, what it doesn't mean the Republic, like the U.S. Republic or what the Republic they used to have. It is the absolute state, and so 1984 is about totalitarian rule and enslaving of everyone. Brave New World is about also dystopia and the enslaving of everyone. Yes, but the method is not the state. The method is entertainment, and it's about brainwashing people with chemicals, yes, but also with fancy, with drugs, with sex, and with all that entertainment stuff. Essentially, 1984 was the enslavement of the body, which enslaved the mind. Brave New World is the enslavement of the mind, which enslaves the body. So he says, so back to Postman. Postman says, it won't be George Orwell that we should worry about. We should worry about Huxley. We should worry about his thesis that we're going to enslave ourselves with entertainment. So that is a good one to read. Very good. Okay, Freud. Freud, Civilization and Its Discontents. That's Freud's criticism of culture, I think. I don't know, I haven't read it. Wikinomics. Sidney Pollard, the idea of progress. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I was interested in the thesis about inevitable progress. Will human beings make progress inevitably? Doesn't matter what we do. Doesn't matter the kinds of arrangements we have, government types and community types and things like that. And so I got a few books on progress, and here was one of them, The Idea of Progress. But I haven't gotten around to reading it. It's kind of went on my shelf, and that was it. So that's something to read. I'll show you the cover, I guess. So, all right, another Rand, The New Intellectual. I read this a long time ago, and I forget really what it was about. I think it's about the anti-intellectualism of current academia. It seems to me that a lot of the big changes are, I want to say, like the heroes of progress, like the people who have made the most influence on the world in any discipline, have not come out of universities. They've been people. They've been regular people. They haven't been PhDs. So, I don't know. Maybe there needs to be a new intellectual. Here's the Thomas Sowell Reader. All kinds of books, I guess Thomas Sowell wrote a lot in the newspaper. There's different articles by him in there. Here's the Essential Chomsky. Chomsky was a linguistics professor and researcher for most of his life, and then he switched to politics. And he got a lot of prestige from that. Not so much from linguistics. So, okay, now we're getting into religion, but I'm going to use one more here. Hitchens. Well, I have one more by Hitchens, but that's it. So here's Hitchens, Letters to a Young Contrarian. So I bought this because I wanted to know, like I had a lot of ideas that were not popular, and I wanted to know, because I know Hitchens is known for that. I saw that Hitchens wrote a book, Letters to a Young Contrarian, which of course is based off the Letters to a Young Poet. That's the original work. And so he wrote Letters to a Young Contrarian. I wasn't very happy with the book. I didn't really learn anything from it. It wasn't very enlightening. So I don't really recommend it. All right. Okay, this is morphing into religion now. Slowly morphing into religion. Here's Reading Lolita in Tehran. I'll show you the cover. I haven't read this. This was actually for a master's course, but we didn't end up having to read it, but I still bought it, I guess. I bought it used though, thankfully. Geez, I hope you can see that. I hope that's not too bright. Lolita, of course, is a famous book about, an adult male has feelings for like a teenager, and stuff like that. And so, and I haven't read that, so I can't really say much about it. It's not just about that. There's all kinds of metaphor and meaning probably you can get out of reading Lolita. But someone wrote a book then on how Muslim women in Tehran would be reading Lolita, which would be probably the most wickedest novel for Muslim women to be reading. So that's what this book is about, but I haven't read it, so I don't really know what the conclusions are or anything like that. Okay, Einstein's Ideas and Opinions. I have read this. It's a collection of his ideas and opinions on different things. I'll just show you here. So about friends, about education, about politics, religion, freedom, Jewish people, on Germany, contributions to science, etc. Just all kinds of little, like 1 or 2 page pieces from Einstein. And I remember now listening to a debate. I think it was Sam Harris and, it was some, I'm not going to remember. It was Sam Harris, and it was versus this, obviously he's a religious guy, but he was very, he had a strange last name. I think he was, I don't know. But anyways, they mentioned Einstein. And they talked about Einstein believed in God, and Stephen Hawking, and things like that. And Sam Harris says, no, if you read Ideas and Opinions, and I had it here, you'll find out that Einstein believed in a personal spirituality. It wasn't a god. It wasn't like a white man and a white bearded guy in his clouds or something like that. It wasn't like a myth. It was more of a personal spiritualness or something. So, okay, more into religion now. All right, the other Hitchens book, Portable Atheist. This has got tons of authors in it. Some really good stuff in here. I have read this, and it was very good. I don't remember anything where they got it, though. But there's all kinds of authors in here. Let me just... there's Lucretius, Hobbes, Spinoza, Hume, who else? John Stuart Mill, Karl Marx, George Eliot. There's Darwin, Mark Twain. Okay, there's a whole bunch of literature. Literature authors. There's Einstein. There's Orwell. Here's Carl Sagan. I was going to say, let me find some more contemporary people. Dan Dennett. I have a book by Dan Dennett. I'll show you in a second. There's Dawkins. There's Dennett again. Weinberg. Stephen Weinberg. Salman Rushdie. Sam Harris, of course. A.C. Grayling. He was once, I don't know, maybe a couple times, he was on the panel and debated with Hitchens, and etc. And Hirsi Ali, so she's the famous, was a Muslim and converted and got out of that situation and now writes against Islam. I guess Islam is the political organization of the Muslim religion, but that's different than Muslim. Or they used to call it Mohammedan, or the Muslims with an O. Like, if you read old books, they'll talk about the Mohammedans, just kind of funny. I don't know if that's an insult or that's just what people used to say. Maybe at the time they didn't know if it would be a great religion or something, I don't know. Here's Dan Dennett's Breaking the Spell. I'll tell you, Dan Dennett is the most self-citing person in all that I've read. He cites himself over and over again as his own books. That's not necessarily, I don't know, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just, it's an observation. Dan Dennett has written lots of books, and perhaps it is easier just to cite your own work when you have an argument. You want to use an argument in a book that you've already written about, so you just cite your own work. But it's just kind of funny. He cites himself so much. So the Breaking the Spell is about, he takes religion, he talks about religion as if it's a natural phenomenon. Let's study it. What is it? What is it about? He looks at religion from a scientific perspective. What is going on here? What do people believe? And what is this? And I thought it was actually very fair to religion. He talks about belief. That is probably the principle in the book. It talks about belief. What is it that people will believe in things? Like, for example, you're a prehistoric man. You are in your tribe. You have no understanding of science. You barely trust your fellow tribesmen. And all of a sudden you have an eclipse occurs, and a hurricane goes through or something like that, and you are scared out of your wits, and now you're going to create these gods, and you're going to sacrifice your children or sacrifice a goat or something to then ward off the wind god, all that kind of stuff. So essentially beliefs begin in these superstitions or in these primitive ways of trying to control your environment, you could say. So even like gods of war, if you don't do these certain rituals before a war, then your army will be slaughtered or whatever. You won't have a successful hunt, for example. All that kind of stuff, or a successful harvest. Superstition is rampant in ignorant man, let's say. So belief is a psychological phenomenon. Perhaps it's a calming phenomenon. We're going to take care of the hurricanes and the pestilence because we're going to pray to a god, and that will soothe people. And so now it's taken care of and I can relax. Or, here's the big one, heaven, an afterlife. We're going to soothe people's fear of death by inventing an afterlife. Oh, don't worry about it. Or a friend dies or someone you know dies. Don't worry about them, or your pet. Don't worry about them. They're in heaven. They'll be waiting for you. Isn't that calming? Absolutely. And that's where it all comes from, this psychology of belief. So that's a good one. That's a good book. I recommend that. All right, a few more here. Okay, where was? Okay, this is I don't know what this is about. I picked it up. I guess it's about Hinduism or Indian holy warriors. It's about Indian fundamentalism. It was like $2, brand new, and I don't know if it's going to be any good. I don't know anything about that. Didn't have anything about Indian religion, India religion, so I picked that one up. Here's a book on Buddhism. A little bit more respect for Buddhism. There's no gods to sacrifice yourself to, or more like there's no gods to sacrifice. There's no people to sacrifice to that represent a god. It's all about individual meditation, individual concentration and betterment and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit more respect for Buddhism as a coping mechanism. That may be harsh, but it seems to me that's what a lot of religion is. So who doesn't have one? I do have one. Everyone should have one on hand, including the Old Testament. You can't cherry pick the Bible. If you want the Bible, you swallow the Bible. And then here's just a textbook on the history of the world religions. Found that in a secondhand store for 50 cents or something. So I thought that'd be nice to have. Okay, that is opinion, culture, etc. I'll do these ones too. These ones are on intellectuals, and I guess this is sort of opinion. So there's Public Intellectuals by Posner. Stay there. Put it up there. Here's Ideology and the Ideologists by Fuhrer. And here is Vision of the Anointed by Sowell. I do have a series on my channel on the intellectuals, and I did do a book review of Intellectuals and Society by Sowell. So you can check that out if you like. I was supposed to do all these books to continue the series, but I just haven't gotten around to it and sort of lost interest. Paul Johnson's Intellectuals. The purpose of that series, I guess you can go look at the video because I did describe it then. The purpose of that series was just to see what the effects intellectuals had on society. So, but that interest kind of went away. But all right, that is the opinion and culture section.